We're at the UKIP Law and Order Conference here in Suffolk, and I've been lucky enough to catch David Campbell-Bannerman, who's the Deputy Leader of UKIP, and I'm going to ask him just to give us a brief, in a nutshell, précis on UKIP's policies on law and order. Very, very important. Please listen, because this is so, so important to everybody out there. Things we need to know. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, indeed. We just finished the Law and Order conference here in Suffolk, and basically we covered a whole number of areas to do with law and order, but specifically on the policy, which we launched earlier this year, 2008. On law and order, we want to scrap the Human Rights Act. That's one of the key things. That prevents us do a lot of things, such as deport threats to our nation, radical imams that need to be sent back, to be honest, to face justice. That Human Rights Act prevents us doing that. You've also got the whole issue of prisoners able to, they have a lot of rights in prison, which really goes against proper discipline in prisons. For example, they're allowed to read hardcore pornography. There was a legal case of 200 of them talking about heroin. They were suing the government in order to have the right to take heroin in prison, this is. So the Human Rights Act has been very bad for this country, and we would get rid of it. That's one of our core policies, and it has a huge impact on law and order. When it comes to policing, we want to make that more democratic. We want local people to decide policing priorities, not have these Home Office placement and targets coming down from on high. And yeah, you would have directly elected police boards or county police authorities. That's a core element of our policy. And beat policing. We've got to go back to beat policing and get policemen back on the street, policemen and women, and replace the community support officers with real policemen, with all the powers of real policemen. In other areas, sentencing, we believe sentences have got to mean what they say. That's absolutely key, and that's a core part of what we're proposing. We are prepared to double the number of prisons in order to accommodate the extra prisoners coming in because of a tougher sentencing regime. But, number one, our policy is to protect society and protect victims and not treat them as the same as prisoners and having the same rights as prisoners, which the EU seems to believe is the case. So that's important in terms of sentencing, policing I've mentioned. There's a whole number of other areas that are in our Law and Order document, which is on the website. It's called Rebalancing Justice. We have real people who've been involved in this with great experience. We have serving magistrate to help write it, a gentleman who's involved in probation, several people involved in probation, a prison governor and policing experts, all involved in formulating our policy. And I believe that what is coming through from it, and reaction here at the conference, is these are common sense policies. We've got to sort out law and order. We're having some terrible crimes committed. Knife crime is out of control. Gang warfare on our streets. We've got to be tougher with policing. We've got to be tougher with sentencing. And we just got to rebalance justice. And that's what this conference and the paper has been all about.
A lot of people are very worried about the amount of crime about now. And we're getting all sorts of figures from this party and that party and the police themselves. So what are the actual numbers we've got of crime, and are we too soft? What is the real picture here?
Well, that's a very key point. I mean, one of the things that's come through from the research we've done is that the government estimate, Home Office statistics say there's only about 5 million crimes. That's enough, but that's all the crimes they estimate every year, 5 million crimes. Well, the British Crime Survey estimates it at 10 million. That's twice as many crimes, and it doesn't even count certain crimes like drug-related crimes. But the Home Office have a study they've done, which is not publicised, but it shows it might be as much as 60 million crimes, which is horrendous. And then you've got Lord Burt, who was the Director General of the BBC, and he was a Downing Street advisor as well. And he actually says it might be as much as 130 million. So the government is patting itself on the back, saying, crimes have dropped to 5 million, when it could be as much as 130 million. So we have a huge problem in this country, and, there's no room for complacency, especially when you think there's 1 million violent crimes every year. It's 2005 figure, and knife crime is really going out of control. So we really have to get a grip on this. And I do urge people to look at the website, look at our Law and Order paper. It's a common sense ideas, not over the top. It's common sense policy, which has been very well received by police and a lot of the magistrates as well that we've spoken to.
Thank you very much indeed. It's very, very interesting. We've learned a lot today. And I do recommend, get on that website, United Kingdom Independence Party, and look it up and learn for yourself. And while you're there, look up West Bournemouth United Kingdom Independence Party, West Bournemouth UKIP, and you'll find a lot of fun there while you're learning. It's a plug for Rod. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you.
Well, John, what was the best part of the conference for you?
Well, all of it, Chris. It was a great day. We really enjoyed ourselves. We had some great speakers. We've tackled all the policies that UKIP have got. It was excellent. Really enjoyed it.
And what about the controversial issues? Do you think that UKIP can confront those by way of this referendum?
Well, I personally am in favour of capital punishment, but we don't, as a party, have a policy on capital punishment, but we would have a referendum if more than 5% of the population wished it. And I think that's democracy in action. We're the true party of democracy because we believe in giving it back to the people.
And what do you believe is the best way to get our message out and out further and further throughout the area and the country?
Working with branches, holding conferences such as this, the media, the internet, getting these events mentioned in the local papers. Basically, branches working together and meeting the public. And how far much of the enemy do you think that this EU constitution, this so-called Lisbon Treaty, is behind the corruption of our laws in this country? I say the Lisbon Treaty is an absolute disgrace. I mean, it's the Constitution under another guise, and basically, when that goes through, we will cease to be an independent state. I mean, the EU is totally corrupt. I mean, for 13 years they haven't approved the books. If that was a company, they'd be closed down and the directors thrown in prison. It's a corrupt organisation, and this Constitution will basically mean it will become a province of the United States of Europe. And I certainly don't want that. I never had a chance to vote in 1975 because I was too young, and I want the chance, I want a say in how this country's run, and I want to get our independence back.
Very good. I also think it's fair that we use multimedia to get across to young people with texts and emails and the whole multimedia platform. Do you think that's the way forward to sort of engage people so that they can do their own thing and we can engage with them one-to-one?
Exactly. I mean, the media today with the internet, I mean, you could have a website, thousands of people can access it. If you send a letter to a newspaper, perhaps a local newspaper, just a few hundred will read it. But with the web, we can have, thousands of hits for a particular subject, and this is the way forward. Use the internet, use multimedia, that's the way to get the message across.
You raised the very hot topic, 40 years since Professor J. Enoch Powell raised his speech on rivers of blood. Was that a wise move, and why did you do it, John?
Well, uncontrolled immigration has been a disaster for Britain, and Enoch Powell raised it 40 years ago, as you've just said. He was not a racist, he was just concerned that the amount of immigrants coming into Britain would overwhelm not only the country but the infrastructure, and that eventually would become a minority within our own country within decades. And that is actually happening now. I mean, uncontrolled immigration from Eastern Europe, uncontrolled immigration from outside Europe, because if non-EU migrants get into the EU and get hold of EU passports, they can come here. I just believe in putting the British people first. We're not a racist party, but it's not race, it's about space. We just cannot cope with the numbers coming here. If people have got genuine skills, and of course we should allow them to come here, we would actually, UKIP would have a point system similar to the one in Switzerland or Australia, but we cannot have open borders because you've got more people in the country, more of your resources are being used, more cars on the road, more pollution, more water's being used, more greenbelt land will have to be sacrificed to build houses. We can't cope. We're one of the most densely populated countries on the planet, and it's got to stop.
Thank you, John.
So, Chris, as co-organiser of this conference, how do you think the day went?
It went very well because we discussed matters that were of importance to the people here and to the greater public that we're trying to get to outside of the hall, because these are the issues they want to talk about. Law and order, punishment, crime, should life mean life, the whole problem on immigration that was discussed today. All of these matters were vital, and I think it's important that we use multimedia to get our end served, John.
The issue of capital punishment came up today. That's a very controversial issue, and I know many people are concerned about it. What are your personal opinions on this subject?
I hold very forthright views personally on capital punishment. Personally, I'm in favour of it, John. But what I do endorse is the party's policy of holding referenda to put it to the people. Paul Nuttal, one of our other speakers today, was very much an endorsed capital punishment. The genie's out of the bottle. I think it's the opportunity for us to ask the people, to free them, to let them have their say through a referendum and through our constitution. We have nothing to fear but the truth.
Of immigration, now obviously that's of grave concern to quite a few people in this country. Indeed, opinion polls have shown that 80% of British people want mass immigration stopped. Do you think that the EU is playing a part in this problem?
They are the cause of the problem, John, because we have an unknowable number of people coming to our shores. We don't count them in, we don't count them out. The economic costs, as you dwelt with in your speech, are literally negligible. The benefit to this country is negligible, and the British people have never been asked whether they want them here. So that is a matter of public concern, and I think the difficult thing is to raise these issues, but it would be more difficult to keep quiet and to hide them away and to scuttle around pretending there was no problem, which many of the parties, in fact all of the parties to date, John, they avoid these issues like the plague. At least we in UKIP give them a platform, we discuss them, and far better than that, we actually provide solutions that are workable.
So, Chris, many people claim, though, that if we leave the EU, it'll be a disaster for Britain. We'll lose jobs, trade, the economy could collapse, that we will upset people in Europe and we'll be isolated. What do you say to that?
I say that that's, may I say so, nonsense, because what we'll be doing is freeing the people. We will be free to trade. This nation was built on free trade. We will be free to buy and sell our goods. We'll be able to re-establish the links that we had with the Commonwealth. At the moment, these crazy tariffs that we have to endure from Europe are keeping prices artificially high. In fact, we're killing people. We're starving them in the Commonwealth. What we need is more free trade. We need it to be more open, and we certainly need to control our own borders. The EU is the very enemy of what this nation stands for. It has cost us literally hundreds of billions of pounds. And that money really, John, needs to be spent at home. What's the old saying? Charity begins at home. And I think the hundreds of billions of pounds that have been wasted to date could be spent here so that we get hospitals, schools, and our own infrastructure. Alison, it was nice to have a lady speaking here today. You were the only female speaker that we had. One of the points that you raised was your experience of people coming here on the backs of lorries or coming into Felixstowe and the sort of things that you see in your daily work. How does all that make you feel after years in the job of seeing that sort of thing going on in this country?
Well, it does make me feel very angry, to be quite honest with you, because we have such hard-working people in this country who were born and bred here, struggling to make ends meet. We've got care homes closing because the government can't afford to run them anymore. Yet when you get people coming into this country from their own place of origin and then just walking into refugee centres or other places that they can get help and snapping up everything that they want, then that just does not smack as justice to me at all.
Alison, I wanted to ask you, the feedback that we sometimes get from female voters, from lady voters in the country, is that they're turned off with the Punch and Judy show. In your opinion, what is the best way to engage the female vote in issues? And may I say a second point, how do we keep their interest in politics? And how can we really engage in the issues that matter to them? What are the real issues that matter to women voters, do you think, in this country?
Well, I think that one of the issues that women do feel that they're underrepresented in is equal pay. I have had women come to me saying that they don't think it's right that a woman should be expected to earn less than a man. Personally, I am interested in women's issues. In my place of work, we have a lot of women coming in who are victims of domestic violence. Those are issues that are very rarely actually discussed in the political arena. I do know that UKIP is dead against anything to do with domestic violence, and we would put steps to put a stop to that. As far as the Punch and Judy show is concerned, a lot of women are fed up with this blustering, egotistical style that certain men have in politics of constantly fighting each other when they should be putting their head together and working out policies to deal with issues. And if we can put across the message that we are not the kind of party that engages in that ourselves, then I'm pretty sure that we can attract that kind of voter.
Allison West, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank everyone who came today. It was a great conference. We had some great speakers. It was a brilliant day, and this is the way forward for UKIP. I will certainly be holding more conferences in the future on other subjects. We held one in this very hall last year on immigration, and we will be holding more, possibly one in the autumn. We haven't decided on the subject, but this is one of the ways to get our message across to the voters, holding meetings like this and inviting the public.